Thank you. I greet you in the name of love. I love life, and I am so joy-filled to fully participate with you in this moment, knowing that this moment is sacred, and that out of all of the infinite possibilities that this moment, that this occurrence has collapsed into manifestation because a vision was caught, because an intention was set, because thoughts were thought, because it was written down on paper, because it was talked about, because it even made it up on a vision board. And mostly because we said yes. We said yes to love, to life, to abundance, to being here at Asilomar to evolve. To evolve. And so it is from that heart space that I fully participate with you today. This idea of evolving is one of spiritual growth. It's one of expansion. It's one of unfolding. Some people call it growing pains. I know I certainly have. And as spiritual people, we grow publicly. Some of us more publicly than others, and some of us more publicly than we want to. And sometimes we grow with ease and with grace, and then other times it's just not so pretty. But evolving is that time of opportunity where we get a chance to release the old and embrace the new. It's about change. And let's face it, lots of us don't like change. We don't want to do it. But then when it happens, we go, gosh, what was I resisting all this time? This is kind of cool. I like the way this fits. This is kind of a nice life now. And all the while, we had no clue what it was that we were just holding on to that we didn't want to let go of. And so the question lies within my heart today is, am I willing to evolve consciously, or am I dependent upon raised thought and mediocrity to evolve me? Because either way, we're going to evolve. Either way, we're going to grow. But we can do so with ease and grace, or we can struggle through it. We do have a choice. So I'll tell you my experience about growing in pain. I know I have some water here somewhere. A lot of you read my bio, and y'all were coming up to me talking about, oh, yeah, you were born in the Bronx. Oh, it sounds like you had a rough life, and, you know, a lot of stuff like that. And, yeah, I was born in the Bronx in the 60s. And in my neighborhood, there was lots of diversity, lots of variety. So I grew up, by the time I was 4 years old, my dad died. So I was definitely missing him. My mom was missing him, so she was kind of a little absent there for a little while. I grew up around a lot of drug runners, numbers runners, a lot of violence, a lot of stuff happening, but definitely lots and lots of diversity. And in the meantime, I was being raised Catholic and then Jehovah's Witness. Talk about change, huh? It was kind of hard going from celebrating Christmas to not celebrating Christmas, you know? That was a hard evolution process for me. Like, what do you mean? What was cool about growing up in that time for me was that picture that I saw, my experience, was my mental equivalent for life. So by the time I was 15, I realized that I was gay. And I was 16 and I left home. And I left home with that mental equivalent, with that picture of what life was. So for me, I began to live out what I saw. Live out drugs, alcohol, violence, death, destruction, all of that stuff for many, many, many years. But in all of it, there was a knower. There was this knower within me that knew that no matter what, life was eternal. That no matter what, there was love, there was abundance, there was peace, there was prosperity, there was joy, there was harmony, there was a different life. And it kept trying to give me that message. No, don't do this. Shut up. No, don't do this. And I would engage in all these behaviors that were hurtful, not only to myself, but to others. Until finally one day, that voice was so loud that I could no longer ignore it. And I had to surrender to that voice. And I'm wondering how many of us are out here today running from that still small voice that may get louder and louder like mine did, but that we're using people, shopping, drugs, alcohol, I don't know, whatever, to snuff it out. How we ignore this God presence that is so vibrant, that is so alive, that is so beautiful within us, that is trying to say, live, be free. And when I was 23 years old, I could no longer take it. There was all this death and destruction and all this stuff happening around me, and I had to surrender. And it was on that day that I made a decision that changed my life. Because that decision put me in touch with a group of people who engaged in prayer and meditation, who were seeking to understand a God. And see, I grew up Catholic and Jehovah's Witness, like I told you. So, I was being told, you're an abomination, you're a sinner, you're disfellowshipped, you can't come worship here, you can't be with us. Yet this group said, you're welcome here. Keep coming back. And it was through a practice of prayer and meditation that I began to understand that there was a power that I could use for good. That if I surrendered to this power and this presence, that I could consciously evolve my life. See, because up until that point, I was living by default. I was evolving because race thought and mediocrity were evolving me. But that decision, like decisions that you make today, will make the difference as to whether it has to hurt to evolve or not. Because it doesn't have to. You see, the story of my life also reminds me of the story of Jesus when he was about to face death, destruction. And he said to his fellow journey travelers, will you stay awake with me? And see, he wasn't saying, yo, y'all, it's 10 o'clock. Will y'all stay awake with me till 12? That's not what he meant. He meant, will you stay awake with me in consciousness? Because I might make an agreement with mediocrity. I might make an agreement with doubt. I might make an agreement with fear. I might make an agreement with lack and limitation. I might make an agreement that is not my truth. Will you stay awake with me? And that's why we come to spiritual community, because we come to spiritual community no matter what spiritual community is, because we want to be reminded of our truth. You see, I was evolving, and it was painful, and it hurt. But because the decision was made to engage in some daily spiritual practices, prayer, meditation, sacred service, visioning, tithing, divine creativity, beauty, because I made an agreement to engage in these daily spiritual practices, the evolution process is not as painful. Because what happens when we engage in our daily spiritual practice, at least what has happened for me, is that I begin to really, really just kind of be in the flow. And really, really grow from the inside out, not from the outside in. We talk a lot about spiritual practice. And yet it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing to actually do it and engage in it. And the benefit that comes from really engaging in it is that it changes our belief. Because we can think thoughts, but the key is when we believe it. Because we can turn off all the lights in here and say, there's light, there's light, there's light. But unless someone takes the action to get up and turn on the switch or open up the shades and allow the light to come on, it's just talk. And I can affirm and affirm and affirm and affirm. But I get to treat and move my feet. I get to put some action behind it. I get to prove that what I'm speaking is indeed what I believe. See, we got to get rid of the old BS belief system. And we got to get on to the new belief system. Because the old stuff, if we're holding on to it, that's where we experience the pain in our evolution. And so it is that when we begin to really dedicate our lives, like we talked about earlier this week, and nourish and reflect upon all that we've gotten this week, what we're being called to do this morning is to really make a decision as to whether we are going to evolve consciously or whether we are going to allow ourselves to depend upon race thought and mediocrity to evolve us. And I tend to believe that as spiritual people, that we want to grow with ease and with grace. And that we must begin to have our daily spiritual practice in place. We got to start someplace. So no matter where it is that we are right now, this is where we begin. We begin within. And we begin by just admitting where we are, by practicing our visioning, by meditating, by coming together in spiritual community, and by making agreements with one another. Will you stay awake with me? Will you stay awake with me?
Yes.
Will you stay awake with me?
Yes.
Then together, because of this sacred yes, together we evolve. Thank you.